everyone who has joined, and apologies for the inconvenience and the last minute changes. There's been a double booking with our Learning Hub. Yeah, I think Stefan is actually still standing upstairs just directing people down there. But yeah, we can start, and I see we have about, well, not considering the people online, sorry, in person, we have about 15 people online as well. So welcome to everyone that's joining from their offices or home. Yeah, this is the BI user group, but in this case, we actually specifically focusing on Fabric, the new product that's been launched by Microsoft in May. And we have Jurgens and Bruin from Microsoft here that's actually going to take us through it. Okay, so like I said, the main topic here is going to be around Microsoft Fabric. And there is going to be a little bit of a hands-on showing the Fabric experience, also presented by Jurgens. And then after that, Sven, that's also here with us in person, is going to award the Enterprise DNA Prize. And you'll learn more about that once we actually get there. But basically just listen out for everything during this conversation, because there is going to be a hint to get that prize. Then next on the agenda is just announcing Data Saturday that's taking place not this Saturday, following week Saturday on the 5th of August. Okay, glad I have my dates right.
Don't forget, if you want, there's also pre-cons on the 4th, which is a full day training on Fabric.
Oh yes, that's I guess more almost the in-depth one. Right?
It's a much deeper dive. It's a practical. Yeah.
Okay.
Is that the one with Donovan White? Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And welcome, Stefan. Thanks for directing everyone downstairs.
Thank you.
Okay. And then lastly, we can have a closing discussion around Fabric, and yeah, there will be some pizzas. So feel free to stick around and continue the conversation. Okay. So just some general Zoom etiquette for those joining online. It would be great if you can enable videos so that yeah, we can just get a little bit more of that in-person experience as well. And just remember to mute your audio when you don't need to speak. Raise the hand. Use the raise hand option if you would like to speak or come in. And we'll be monitoring Zoom just to see if there's any questions or comments to be added. And then lastly, it would be great to get your full name and surname, just for any details around if the Enterprise DNA Prize is perhaps awarded to you. Okay, and just a quick reminder of the BI user group format. On odd numbered months, we have what we have now. It's a hybrid session, and we try to have a main topic and a workshop. And on even numbered months, we have what we call news flashes. So that's focused around what's new in the BI space. And there's also a flash or two, which is normally a very quick 5-minute presentation on anything you've learned or anything that you've found useful in whatever BI tool it could be. Okay, so, and if you need to see the dates for the upcoming BI user groups, this is it. We are currently on the 27 July one, and there's 4 events left for the rest of the year. And now we come to the main event for tonight, which is on Microsoft Fabric. I've actually just used the topic from last month. There was a, I hope that's still correct, Jurgens. Yeah, just a quick introduction to Jurgens de Bruin. He's a cloud solutions architect at Microsoft, and yeah, he's here to present to us about Fabric. So over to you, Jurgens.
Thank you.
Start screen sharing when you're ready.
I'll start. Hi, everybody online. Everyone in the room, welcome. I think most of you I've dealt with online via Teams or some type of meeting. I think I can wave that way as well. Thanks for the introduction. So I'm a cloud solutions architect, just as a note. So I do focus mainly on data and AI. So obviously, key thing, I don't know if any of you listened to any of the Inspires, builds. Obviously, 2 main things that are coming to play, OpenAI and Fabric. So OpenAI, we can have a discussion on that a bit at some point. but from tonight we're going to talk about Fabric, okay? And how I'm going to structure this, and you guys are more than welcome to follow along with me, and I'll put some of the stuff on so as soon as I start sharing. But I have created a PDF, which is a very light intro into just getting yourselves going and starting to build some things with Fabric so that you can see, but I'll show you the guide and how we process as soon as I start sharing. So I'm going to start that now. So try and share my screen. Let's see. I don't know. I'm used to obviously Teams. I don't know why. But that's just my preference. So yeah, I don't know. It's just one of those things. Can everybody see my screen? Yes, there's it on the board online. I hope you guys can see. So yeah, I don't know what the process is, but we can share this PDF document with the group. I don't know if you guys have a way of sharing it, but yeah, I'll be provided, but we'll follow it so that you can see this is literally what's going to happen. But before we get into this, I don't know, let's just have a chat. Like, what is the group's perception of Fabric at this point in time? Do you see it as just Microsoft trying to rock the boat? Do you see it as a value add? What is your perceptions at this point regarding Fabric and what you've seen? I don't know if I can ask the group that.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, I don't know. Anybody feel free to say like whatever they want to say about it at this point in time.
It's a confusing term.
Yeah, confusing term.
Because it's a tool, but you've got also the Fabric thinking out there.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, I'm still trying to understand if you guys are trying to replace Azure or if you spin off so that it's just a one-stop instead of like Azure. Azure has lots of resources, but you can pay as you use with Azure. So I'm trying to understand the difference between why it would spin off into its own domain product.
Great, that's a good one. I'll answer that question now. Anybody else online? So yeah, I don't know how you deal with online questions or comments, but they can hear that. Okay, so let's talk about that. It's a very good point. Like, there's this whole perception, isn't Microsoft competing with itself? In terms of, if you look at Fabric, yes, you can create a data warehouse, but it's not a SQL warehouse as like we all have done for millions of years. Not making an assumption you're all old, but yeah. It's not the same point. It's all based on SQL endpoint. So it's all actually still related to Bokeh files. Even your SQL is related to a Bokeh file. So are we competing with ourselves? No, we're just shifting to what we've observed people are asking for. So to your point, Azure is very powerful, but also very complex. And I know some of you in the room have tried or have done this, and some online have tried to do this, but costing a synapse prior to a project is not the easiest thing because you don't know what you don't know.
Lots.
No,
It's just lots.
yeah. So this process, to your point, is to create more of a t-shirt sizing for our customers, so to make it easier, okay? And also to actually help with that whole idea of breaking down data silos. So we've had like a bit of an offline discussion at the top about this whole idea of now breaking down data silos, because even with data lake and everything, you're still seeing this whole idea of each division and organization having their own data lake. Now I'm referring to Azure data lakes, stuff like that. And then if you want to actually get data from one place to another, it's copying data all over the place. So remember with Fabric, that doesn't happen. Okay? So it's actually literally now for the first time, we are going to get that single pane of glass, that window, we can look into our data landscape. And that's what we're trying to solve for. So it's not competing with Azure in any aspect. Actually, quite the opposite. You can still have your traditional data lakes, everything in Azure, and just put Fabric on top of it, actually. So yeah, I hope that makes a bit more sense. But it's going to be easier for some people to get the perception of it. So For example, if we look the example we used this morning, and we don't have this now. It's very new. We don't have an example of an enterprise implementation. We don't, because we're not supporting enterprise implementations at this point. It's preview. So we don't know what's going to work. But if you think about it, you can have multiple workspaces, and I'll show you what I mean by workspace in a bit. But let's say you're working with an organization and they don't want finance, doesn't want marketing, everybody doesn't work in the same workspace. But somebody, somewhere, needs a workspace that needs to see everything, okay? You can create each one their own workspace, each one their own one lake. Happy with that. You can create this one lake, and all you do is you shortcut to the different departments, and this one sees everything. But what's the difference? It's not copying the data. Data is not being shuffled all over the place. It's just metadata referencing Parquet files. So as soon as you shortcut one lake from one lake to another one lake, it just brings in the metadata into that so that it knows, the engine knows what's happening all over the place. So it's literally single source of truth. So marketing can't tell to them, no, you're not using the right data set because you're using exactly the same data set, if that makes any sense. Okay.
There's a question here from the chat. From Colleen saying, hi, so is it not one or the other? If you have Azure, do you need Fabric? If you have Fabric, do you need Azure?
I don't think it's actually one or the other. You can, if you're a very small organization and you don't want to dive into the Azure stuff, you can actually do everything you would like to do in Fabric. But for enterprises, you might have to go both Fabric or Azure. Depends on what you want to do. So yeah, I wouldn't say it's one or both, but it all depends on what you want to try and achieve.
So are we doing questions later as well, or are we going to ask all the questions now?
No, I just wanted to open up, and then we'll dive into the actual space of it now. Okay, so believe it or not, I actually have access to Fabric. You wouldn't believe that. Although I don't have access to Copilot, I do have access to Fabric. So the first thing you do is, most of you in this group would actually know it's very similar than your Power BI workspace, okay? The only difference is at the bottom here, you'll see there where my mouse is, it actually now says Fabric, okay? So that's one thing for everybody. If you want to know if your organization has enabled Fabric, down here at the bottom, you will have something that looks like the same data factory, okay? So that's the one thing to do. So we're just going to give it a nice little name. I actually am going to cheat a bit. So we're just going to actually create this workspace, okay? So obviously the workspace, and you can see here I'm following in the guide, is actually all it is. There's nothing in it for now. Now we're going to create a warehouse, okay? So like we all actually used to, we're going to start creating a warehouse. But creating a data warehouse in this context is a lot easier than we would normally have done. Just move this away. Sorry.
Jurgens,
Yeah.
could we actually do this along with you or not?
Yeah, if you guys, so online or in the room, if you want to follow, please do it. So please. That's the whole purpose of the exercise. Yeah.
Where would we log into? Sorry, just at MS.
So no, don't log into that. That's mine. So you would log into Power BI. So apps.powerbi.com. So you would log into that. So for the guys online as well, you would log into apps.powerbi. So please, guys, don't use my URLs. I'm on a different Azure than the rest of the world is.
Do you need Fabric activated on the tenant?
Yeah, you need Fabric activated on the tenant.
We haven't got that activated.
Yeah.
That intellect, yeah.
And intellect tenant, because we're very specific about a use case internally that we're trying to do with a 60-day trial.
Which makes sense.
Yeah, it's not to have like, an individual doing it here and an individual doing it there.
And then
all of a sudden, nobody can activate
No,
it.
you're
I'll tell you something special about the 60-day trial.
Sorry?
Yeah, I'll tell you something special.
Yeah,
about it.
please.
I've been on 59 days,
59
last
days.
month and a half. So
One of our
they're
clients
actually
said
probably
the
not
same
going to
thing.
retire that until GA.
I didn't actually want. I hope nobody was realizing that. But I've also been on. Everybody's been on for 9 days.
So we can just
For a while.
activate it, then it will be okay for
Yeah,
half a
yeah,
year.
Fine.
But they wanted to go live on like force it on the 1st of August, which is like a few days from now. I'm sure they're behind. I'm just assuming.
No. So Fabric release dates. We're not supposed to say when,
Yeah.
but we're hoping we can give it to you guys as a Christmas present. So.
Okay.
So it will remain on 59 until December.
Yeah. But it's like, you remember how Power BI when it first came, right? You could just keep pushing that extend for 60 days.
Yeah,
trial.
yes.
Yeah.
They want to get you hooked properly, and then once all your business critical stuff, then they're going to start charging.
Yeah, the part that I was nervous about is we on embedded capacity, the A SKU. The problem is you can't do Fabric, and once you go to Fabric, you can't go back. That's certainly what I've read. So
Yeah. No. If you.
in our one tenant, we've enabled it, and the other tenant, the capacity tenant, we're not doing it.
Come on, go. Same time.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just you.
No. Go. Ahead.
It's the capacity. It's the capacity you
Yeah.
assign to the workspace. So when you go and list it,
Yeah.
it'll have the Fabric capacity
Yeah.
and the premium capacities.
Yeah, but we don't want to convert it. We don't want to do. Well, I suppose it's free trial right now, but we don't want to move some stuff and then find we can't go back. That's the issue we've got. Yeah.
But the embedded capacity, that's an Azure SKU.
Mm.
So that sits outside of Fabric or Power BI. So remember, embedded is an Azure SKU.
Yes.
It's not a Power Platforms SKU. It's a bit different licensing process. Okay, so I don't know where everybody else is that's following. I'm going to make assumptions. You guys are with me. So we've created our warehouse. So great, that's there, so you can see it. Obviously, nothing in there for now, okay? Other than it's a warehouse, okay? So we would actually want to get some data into that as well. So how are we going to do this? And the data is publicly available via the link I've given you. So we are providing a lot of free, well, not free, but publicly available databases that you can actually access and go and play around with and so forth, okay? So we are here in our warehouse. So we're going to go to our warehouse here. Come on, going to go new. Okay, so this is an interesting one. I don't know why this one is. So just for everybody's sake, if you experience this, I don't know if it's just mine, but if you're on your workspace, new, show all. So if you're familiar with pipelines, this is the pipeline. For mine, for some reason, I need to double click to get this thing to actually activate. So to get it to actually create a pipeline for myself. Some people do one click, some people it doesn't click, I don't know. Preview. It's preview. So yeah, using you guys as always meta testers for ourselves. I didn't say that. So customer data. I'm going to create that pipeline. And the rest should, if you actually come from a data factory perspective, this should look very familiar in terms of the copy activity. So I don't know if anybody here is familiar with data factory. I know some of you are for a fact. So this should look very familiar. So we're going to do a copy activity. Okay. So this should look very familiar. If you actually have ever done anything, this should look exactly the same. The thing is now we've actually renamed destination to sync, from sync to destination actually. So now it actually makes a bit more sense for some people to do. So we're gonna just, I don't like typing in these type of things, so I generally copy and paste. Watching me type is not the most stimulating thing ever. Okay, so here is actually where it becomes quite interesting in terms of the fact that I think I should have a connection to that already for us, but you can create the connection by just clicking on new, and per the guide, let's just open that one up a bit bigger, and I'll show you how to do that. So I've done that a few times, so that's why it is. So you basically click on new, you select an Azure blob, okay, because that's where the data resides, okay. You enter the URL, don't enter the full stop, just onto the slash, that obviously makes sense. You give it a connection name, and you can just actually access this via anonymous. So it's a public data set. We have quite a few of them. if you're actually familiar with Azure Data Explorer, you can actually use this as well. Just pop that in Azure Data Explorer and you can actually see the worldwide importers there, the NYC taxi database is in there, the COVID database is in there. If you ever need sample data, actually you can go find nice big data sets to go play around with, okay? And then basically now what we're going to do is we want this worldwide importers, the Parquet file, the dimension for the city, and that's what we're going to pull into our warehouse for now. So let's just quickly do that. So in here at the bottom for container, I've actually put that for you guys in the guide. We are going to fill in this for us in that scenario. So obviously what's happening here is I'm just telling it to go fetch that Parquet file for us in that sense, okay? Here, just remember to actually go about and say that it is a Parquet file. Bigger. If you don't say Parquet, it's not going to, you're going to get an error. Okay. I've had this question today, so I'll just actually tackle this in this user group. No, we don't think Snowflake is going to be able to pull in data from Snowflake into Fabric.
Ever or now? Foreseeable future.
You don't know.
Yeah. Isn't that a big
What?
gap? Yeah.
The product team and engineering team says is most unlikely. Snowflake uses a proprietary file format. It's not based on like Parquets or
Oh, they
icebergs.
moved into Iceberg though.
Yeah, so we might if we can get the iceberg stuff, but for now it doesn't seem like that will actually be something that's going to come from us. Okay, so the destination, obviously for now I'm going to dump it into my warehouse. Into that, quite simple. Okay, you see? Are you?
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you.
No. We're here to learn. So. Okay. So so this is changed a bit. So if you see the guide, and I wrote the guide on Monday, it's changed literally now auto create tables is not under advanced anymore, it's just under table options. Okay. So schema name, DBO, obviously we're being very creative there. And this is the dimension for customers, okay? Not really rocket science up until this point, okay? Now, that's it. So now we can run this. So we can open it and run. So we have not provisioned any computes. We're not really worrying about how many Spark instances we're spinning up for this. So all the weird stuff that is associated with Synapse is now actually being handled based on your capacity license you're opting for. And I think that's one of the big things that is going to make this more usable for the audience and the larger group. So you can see it's ingesting while that's happening.
So it's basically software as a service now, no longer.
So that's exactly it. So Synapse, Azure, platforms as a service, Fabric, software as a SaaS offering. In essence. That's purely what it is. Okay. And you can see here from where we were from like literally creating a workspace, a warehouse, and pulling in data. This is quite a lot. You'll have a look at how much we've pulled in now. I was quite quick, and it wasn't really difficult. Let's be honest about it. For most of us here, that should be relatively easy to do. Okay. So yeah. So now we've loaded the data, but now let's go and actually create a table based on what we have available. So I'm going to click on my warehouse here on the left hand side. I'm sure it should be everybody's left. So, and now this is again where Fabric talks to personas. So some people like pipelines, some people like all visual ways of doing things, some like SQL scripts, some like store procs, but it doesn't really matter. It's all up to you, based on preference, based on complexity. Maybe you have a store proc or something, it's as long as I am, if you print it out, and nobody wants to rebuild that. So you can just bring it into here. All that is still applicable within this. And the first one we're going to do is basically just create a table on this, okay? So if you look at what we have here at the top, we have our ribbon for our table tools, and we are going to create this table using a SQL query. So I'm just going to click here on new, and this should look very familiar. It should look like SQL, okay? And again, I don't like typing code in front of people, so I'm going to be very lazy. And I'm going to paste it. Okay. Let's quickly have a look. So I'm going to do SQL 101, if you guys don't mind. But it's, again, not the most sophisticated piece of SQL code here. We're just basically creating a table for dimension cities and a table for fact sales. Okay. And the rest is basically create. Okay. So now, again, just want to close this one up. A bit of a discrepancy between the guide and what we saw earlier is they've changed where you save your scripts. So in the guide at the top, so I apologize, I will do new ones. But now if you want to save this, I want to do it like this, you don't save but you rename in essence. So I'm just going to call this script create table, and basically it comes down to right click, rename, select all, and there's the script. Now we can run the script. Okay, go. I bring that down. So now the script's run, it says successful, but we don't see anything here, so all we need to do is, well, okay, so you don't need to, it's going to refresh maybe itself, but let's quickly see here. If I click on the refresh button at the top, now we should see a table appearing here, hopefully, at some point in my life.
So while you're waiting, maybe I'll ask the question from earlier. When you were asking about sort of what you guys think about Fabric, so I think it fits well for, you know, medium and large companies. I know you've got baby Fabric licenses all the way down, tiny, tiny, tiny. I don't think little companies are going to use that. It seems too expensive. If they don't need Synapse, if they don't need Data Factory, they only need Power BI, they're likely to just stay Power BI, is my hunch. Even though you've got the tiny Fabric licenses. And I can see that, and to me that makes sense. But the larger companies, equally, it makes sense for them to use Fabric. If they've got the budget, it's a no-brainer. Yeah.
But I don't feel the opposite. I think it's the small companies that are going to pile into it. I mean, you cannot get this functionality. The smallest one is $250, $5.5 grand.
But I don't think they know
you can't even turn Synapse on for that.
Yeah, but they don't know what to do with it. That's the thing.
No, if you don't know what's happening, but you can entertain that notion of this product. I think it's gonna, and I love the fixed pricing. The fixed pricing is fantastic. It's like, because always it's that conversation around how much is this going to cost. Well, let's run it for a month and then we'll tell you. Versus this, it's going to cost the exact amount. It might perform.
It's a big stepping stone into that world. Yeah. So people don't always want to commit to a massive monthly.
I mean, Microsoft are making sure it's visible, right? That's why it's turned on now. It wasn't originally. You had to opt into it. Now you see it, and people are gonna, I think the shock's gonna be come your 60-day trial expiring, and then all of a sudden you realize how many workspaces you've created using Fabric, and now you're gonna have to go higher capacity because all this stuff doesn't work. But, I mean, it's, I like my clients to SME. No,
I think I have to agree with like SMBs, but now you to define what is your definition of an SMB? How many seats are we talking about? So if I mean seats, I mean actual people in the company. I think for $250, you can do a lot of value for a small company for $250, in my opinion. Which they've been running on millions and millions of Excels for millions and millions of months. So yeah.
And I suppose the fact that you can just scale up at any point, it allows your business to grow.
Yeah.
So you don't need to worry about, okay, at what point do we need to go and scale up our Synapse instance? You can just say, well, I'm going to our Fabric tier.
The problem is the smaller companies, I find they complain about having to buy a pro license. How come I need 5 or 10 pro licenses? Now they're going to need the Fabric license and the pro licenses. So they're getting much more for it than they were before, but they don't really know how to use it. So I don't think they're going to take full advantage. If they've got people to help them, that's a different story. But if they're trying to do it themselves, I just don't see them being able to.
No, but I
or wanting to, yeah.
As themselves, no.
Yeah.
But I'm going to be honest, that's what partners are there for. That's why we have a partner network. You guys, and if you guys are interested in SMBs, there's a lot of SMB days. So small medium business days at the offices where we show them how to actually utilize these most effectively for them. Okay, and there's a big drive this year on our FY24, which kicked off a few days ago on that market space. So yeah.
It will also be very interesting to see where the break-even point lies for clients that, I mean, you're talking about maybe clients also that don't have anything in place yet, or maybe in Power BI.
Yeah.
But what about some of the larger organizations that have already got a fully functioning Synapse environment? And
Absolutely.
When do you make a transition? Does it make sense? Do you have to rebuild? Do you have to refactor, etc., etc.? So I'm quite keen to hear about migrations.
So I think I can say this. I don't know if I can say this. There will be migration tools for those that want to migrate. There will be tools that are coming, but it's going to be complex. So if you think about how Synapse's SQL warehouse works, which is a distributed SQL with hash tables and all that, this doesn't have that. So we hope for GDA that will be Z ordering on the podcast. But other than that, it's going to be totally different. So the whole design is going to have to be redone. So
it can be a big job.
It can be a big job, but there are going to be migration tools. What they're going to do, I actually don't know. I don't think the guy that actually is writing them at this point does know what's going to be.
It can actually be very easy, right? If you've done certain patterns, it's just copy and paste your code.
Yeah.
So that could be as easy as that. Yeah.
The issue as well, sorry, is that people, I think, are going to be hesitant to move across unless it's become a reputable, well-known product. Because if it's unless the uptake is really good, it could come and have an end of life in 2 years' time. That means that you have to migrate everything back. So it's got to have that.
Microsoft has bet the boat on it. They're not.
So Synapse is not going to do an end of life. Synapse will be with us for, I think, it'll outlive most of us. Same with SQL. I don't think those are going anywhere.
Yeah, those one. I mean, this Fabric.
Fabric is
As long as there's a good uptake, then
No,
Microsoft can sustain it.
There's a good uptake. It is up the. I'm going to say this without being facetious or disrespectful. The amount of requests and asks and stuff for Fabric, when is it coming? We want to use it, is enormous at this point. Okay, so we have our tables, but we haven't actually loaded anything in there. So I'm just basically going to tell it now, and you should actually, some of you might know this type of a SQL command where you're actually trying to pull something from like a data lake or blob from Parquet into a table. So I don't know if all of you have seen this, but this is basically what that is as easy as this in this context. It's actually not difficult. And again, to save, for some reason, you rename. So, but this might change. And we can run, this one actually runs 4 bits. So now basically loading the parquets into Dimension City and fact sales. So fact sales is the bigger one, obviously. Facts what you're doing are bigger ones. So this generally on mine runs for a minute.
So then maybe I can ask another question.
Yeah,
so have you come across anyone who's done some direct lake experiments? Because I mean that's the part I'm excited about. I just don't want to get too excited about it until it's been tested to prove that it's going to do what it says it's going to do.
You mean one lake?
No, the direct lake. So that's it's the direct query with one lake. So basically real time. Are we going to do that?
Yeah.
Okay, well, that'll be very cool.
Okay.
Yeah. So if that works for me, that's like done deal. You know.
I saw something, and I'm still on the lake. Sorry, Sven, I don't want to interrupt you, but I saw something on the one lake, which I don't know if I love it.
Yeah.
But you can actually map your one lake that is created with Fabric as similar to a OneDrive. So you'll have it in Windows Explorer.
Oh, so
Yeah, in your Explorer. So I don't know. I don't know if I like that.
It's out there.
It's out there. I don't know if I
They get a
I
personal
think
one lake and a business one lake.
But it's just metadata shortcuts.
yes,
There we go.
vastly differently.
Does that just mimic a Data Explorer? It's a
No,
data
it's
explorer.
literally in your Windows Explorer, like your OneDrive. Your one lake will be in your in Explorer. But I think access to that will have to be. You can't give everybody access to that, especially read write.
Oh wow. Yeah.
Exactly. Something like that. No, okay, so this is done. So this took literally a minute, and I'm just going to highlight the. You can see that it's not
Mickey Mouse data.
That's quite a significant amount, so I use a significant amount, and that's a minute to load. So from Parquet, I think that's not too bad. I think we can live with that for now. And yeah, that's the fact sales. If we click on it, it'll give us a preview of the first 1,000 rows.
So
Is that about 50 million records? Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
There's another question.
Please.
Okay. So it's maybe more of a comment, but for me, the way that I'm making sense of Microsoft's approach with Fabric is if, this is the BI user group, so let's put it into context of Power BI. So before Power BI existed, there was Power Query that was actually in Excel, if I remember correctly, and I think at some stage there was a Power Viewer, although I don't think it was on the market for too long. Yeah. And then, of course, SSAS has existed forever, and there's Excel. So it seemed, so then Microsoft went and bundled all those together into Power BI and delivered it as a software as a service offering. So it looks like the same approach is now being followed with all the Azure database services and bundling it together into Fabric as software as a service.
It is literally that. It is a data lake, which we've now termed one lake. It is data factory, Synapse, data engineering, Synapse machine learning, all that on top of the one lake, or software as a service. So these we used to have as platforms in a service in Azure. Now it's all bundled under the Power BI umbrella software as a service. That's literally what we're trying to do. For several reasons, I think. There's several reasons. And I think one of the biggest ones is, to your point, is we'll run it for a month and see what it's going to cost the entire exercise. When now it's much more predictable.
Yeah. And if you consider the massive uptake we had in Power BI, globally, I expect it to be similar on Fabric.
Yeah. But to your point, so you mentioned you've built a report using S3 buckets. So you can still use Fabric in an S3 bucket. So you just shortcut your S3 bucket. Am I allowed to say that? I don't know.
Actually been announced at the data platform user groups. Yeah.
But it doesn't copy. So remember, it doesn't copy your data. So remember, one thing is from cloud to technology. Moving data from one cloud to another cloud. Extremely expensive. But this is not doing that. It's not copying the data. So it's not moving it from S3 to Azure or wherever.
Just the method.
It's just the
That's the
data.
Fabric thinking.
And that's the fabric thinking. And I think that is, for me, I like that concept.
But isn't that what Snowflake's trying to do? Which is why, like, you're obviously going against them. You're competing against them. And obviously, if you can't get their data in because of the proprietary stuff, they've got a big share of the market. And so now that's one huge piece that you can't get in. But I mean, if you can get everything else in, maybe it's good enough. I don't know.
I don't know, but we don't know how. Maybe the guys are working on it. So it could be, but it could be a year, 2 years down the line.
The Snowflake guys were proud to say that they work with Microsoft and they get all the Microsoft stuff in so easily in their world. But that was before Fabric arrived, and so maybe that undoes the friendliness a little bit. I'm not sure, but yeah.
One thing I can say, which, well, it is known. So if you look at your operational SQL warehouses, so you can still use Synapse link in Fabric. So literally, as a record is created in an operational warehouse, it'll appear in Fabric. So literally almost real time. So who knows? They're working on that, and they want to have that available with GS. So we don't know what's going to happen with Snowflake. So maybe they are working with it. So
the other shortcut that's probably worth mentioning is Database. So all your Dynamics customers, right? It's just going to be there.
So for those of you that like store props, use store procedures. So very easy, a store procedure like we would normally do. So you still have all those warehousing capabilities you are familiar with as well in our Fabric. Okay. So this is an aggregated procedure. So we'll quickly have a look at this. I just want to make sure we name it. But if we look at this one, so obviously it's creating a store prop. So if it exists, obviously dropping it, but we can see here, this is the important part, it is an aggregate table. So we're just creating an aggregate table with the store prop over those tables we've created. So the fact sales one, which is at 50 million one, okay? So the point here is, let's note how long this is going to take to run, okay? I think that's what we all want to see, is the performance of this in terms of creating those. Right. Now we're just going to have a refresh. Now, because I've created a store prop, you will see your store procedures like we're all used to seeing will actually appear there as well. Okay. So we can see all that. Okay. So that is also part of that whole exercise we have available. Okay. Obviously now we've created this. Now let's execute. So you saw I had to literally run the store procedure so that it appears there. And now we can actually create the next one, the execute function. This one also takes about a minute.
Okay. So I'm curious to know how many people around you have used Data Factory before? Okay, so that's also new. So like most of us are using Power Query, you know, backwards and forwards, in and out all day long. But the Data Factory side of things, so that's cool. It comes with Fabric, and we've got to now make the leap going from Power Query into Data Factory.
Yeah. Dataflow's in it.
Okay, but I mean,
Dataflow Gen 2.
yeah.
Physically, like you write your imports in Power BI.
Yeah.
The nice thing, instead of it happening in the model somehow that you don't really see. You can actually choose a target, which can be Delta tables, it can be SQL, it can be.
When we tried it,
physically
when it
ingest.
first came out, we tried to use existing data flows. Maybe it was too early. It didn't work back then. So yeah, you and I were trying that.
So it's called data flow Gen 2. It's different.
Yeah.
It's not a Gen. It's not a data flow.
Okay.
Not like today's Gen.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe that was the issue. Yeah.
So that the data flow Gen 2s, but there's also the visual way of creating it. But I see we are out of time, so I don't want to jump to 1 second. So this is also in there, but there's the visual queries, and this for me has a very Power BI look and feel to it. So Power Query, this is a very Power Query feel to me. So I've also worked in Power BI for a few years. So this for me, when I saw it, it was like, oh, this is Power Query. So literally, if we quickly have a look, this should look very familiar to most of you, this type of a layout.
Yeah.
The only difference now is we had to go color code the join types and literally draw little circles. I don't know why. I find it very sad, but let's not go there. Okay. Because time, guys, like I said, this will be available, but I think I want to jump to one section. This is the Power BI user group. So let's jump to the visualization portion of the whole exercise. So you obviously can create your visuals. So we're going to go first just on the modeling side. So this will also look very interesting, very familiar to most of you. Yeah. So this will look very familiar to you, and in this process of doing that, to create a relationship, click and drag to create relationships with data models will also be something that is not very unfamiliar to you guys. So do that. So, and this one, yeah, again, not really unfamiliar to you all. So I'm going to still keep this a single, and that, just going to confirm, and it's going to create a relationship for us. So again, this doesn't look that unfamiliar. Okay. So we've done, this is also in the guide, so you guys don't need to worry about this. It is all there for us. But now let's actually go about and try and just create something in terms of a visual perspective. Okay. So at the top here, we're going to go create a new report. And I think this is actually talks to your point previously, Sven, in terms of Power BI licenses versus this. So you actually don't look like a pro license when you're using Fabric, because you actually just develop it in here. Like for a small, medium business, they can just do it in Fabric. They don't need to actually, in my opinion, now go buy 6 million pro licenses to publish. I don't see the point, but that's just my opinion.
I didn't realize that. That's quite cool.
Yeah, so yeah, Power BI in Fabric, and you can just go and build a report. And I'm quite sure all of you know how to do that. I'm going to make that assumption, if you don't mind. But yeah, same principles. There we go.
And we already saw that the model view is also available in Fabric.
Model view, same principle, might be all available.
And if you publish this, then it's still available in the Fabric service.
Yeah,
So
it's still
you have a free user review.
exactly. So it's still part of that Fabric experience. So it will be Fabric does generally fall within the premium capacity. So you will still have that ability to add the Power BI reports, make it available. Obviously, with the embeddings, that will also be embedding to my SKU, and you can actually point to your service. Same principles will apply for that purpose as well. Okay. One thing I want to show you guys, which I don't know again if you guys are going to like this or not, but let's quickly have a look at that. So you can save your reports. But now we're going to go to our one lake. Just save that for now. We've all done that, so we've all saved something as report one, so don't crucify me for that. We've all done that. So we're going to go to our one lake. So icon here, so one lake data hub here. So I've added that to you guys as well. But now we're just going to go to this one that says default data. Okay. You're going to go here where it says visualize data, and I'm just going to go auto create.
While this is running, there's a question in the chat. Will report building be only on the service or Power BI desktop as well?
Both.
Okay. So similar to the idea of connecting to a data set.
Same, simple process. Connecting like to a Power BI to published data set, simple process, but I think you probably connect to either the one lake or the warehouse. But it's all, the warehouse would be like, look like a SQL endpoint, but it, yeah, let's leave it for that now.
Okay. So why did they bring out data marts if Fabric is basically that plus more? Because the whole data mart functionality was you bring the data in and you do the relationships and you add your measures and then that's all data stored in one place. But that's exactly what Fabric is. And it's a year later.
Data marts were like the trial to see like if this is going to work. I don't know what
there's also licensing consideration. If you are a Power BI shop, you're still going to have data marts. You don't have to get the Fabric, right? So for those people you say you are going to come across, still something there. It's just not as good. Fabric.
Okay.
Gain yield.
And created a report. It's automatically created the report. We didn't do literally anything. What I found quite interesting is this one that says it actually looks at the stock item keys and it actually noticed a trend down, resulting in a 73% decrease.
It's doing smart narratives.
It's doing smart narratives as well. And we've actually not even touched on when Copilot is going to be embedded into this, how that's going to change our lives.
So this was in GoPilot?
No.
This was Fabric.
Fabric.
There's auto create been around for a while. And obviously now they're bringing it into Fabric. In fact, they're bringing it into almost everything. That's how they're competing against some other BI tools, because other BI tools have also had that for a while. And they show off, you just drag a spreadsheet into this thing and there's your reports. So the auto create is the same thing. Well,